The laughter echoed across the polished marble lobby when the words "I just want to check my balance" were spoken, and it wasn't cruel at first, just careless, the kind of laughter born from privilege that had never known hunger, exhaustion, or fear of tomorrow. The billionaire's smile was easy and confident, shaped by years of winning, until his eyes drifted down and froze on the glowing screen in the trembling hands of a single-dad janitor, and in that instant the laughter died, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt like the building itself was holding its breath. Before this story unfolds any further, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of ordinary people who carry extraordinary stories inside them. The janitor's name was Daniel, though most people in the building never bothered to learn it. To them, he was just the man in the faded blue uniform who arrived before sunrise and left long after the city lights blurred into tired streaks. His days began with a cracked alarm clock at 4:30 a.m., the sound slicing through sleep he never quite finished. He would sit up slowly, careful not to wake his daughter sleeping on the mattress beside his own, and for a moment he would just watch her breathe, counting each rise and fall as if that rhythm alone gave his life meaning. She was 7, small for her age, with hair that never stayed tied and eyes that carried too much understanding for someone so young. Her mother had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving Daniel to learn how to be both shield and softness, strength and comfort, while the world kept demanding rent, school fees, and groceries that cost more each month. The building where Daniel worked was a monument to success, glass and steel rising like a declaration of power. Executives walked its halls with phones pressed to their ears, speaking in numbers that sounded unreal to Daniel, numbers that could erase his worries with a single decision. He cleaned their offices after they left, wiping fingerprints off desks that held contracts worth more than his lifetime earnings. Sometimes he would pause, not out of envy, but out of exhaustion, leaning on his mop and reminding himself why he was there. Every swipe of the floor was a step closer to keeping the lights on at home, a step closer to his daughter's next birthday cake, even if it came from a discount store. Daniel's life had not always been this small and quiet. There was a time when he wore a different uniform, when his hands shook for reasons other than fatigue. He had served, come back changed, and found that the world he returned to had no easy place for men who carried invisible scars. Jobs slipped through his fingers, interviews ended politely but quickly, and savings disappeared into hospital bills and funeral costs. Becoming a janitor was not a dream, but it was honest work, and honesty was something Daniel still believed in fiercely. He believed that if he kept showing up, kept doing right by his child, something, someday, would soften. That morning, the billionaire was visiting the building for a surprise inspection, a symbolic walk through the empire he had built from nothing, or so the magazines liked to say. He moved with a group of executives who laughed at his jokes and nodded at his observations. To them, he was a visionary, a man whose decisions moved markets. When his attention landed on Daniel, it was almost accidental, a passing glance that lingered because Daniel had paused near an ATM tucked into the corner of the lobby. The janitor looked tired, older than his years, and he held his phone in one hand while his other hand hovered near the screen, hesitating. Daniel had promised his daughter pancakes that morning. Not the thin ones he usually made, but the thick, fluffy kind she saw in cartoons. He needed to know if he could afford the eggs and syrup without overdrawing his account. That was all. Just a number, just reassurance. When the billionaire noticed him and made the comment, it wasn't meant to wound, but it did, because laughter from someone who has never worried about a balance carries a weight it doesn't understand. Daniel did not respond. He simply unlocked his phone and opened the app. The screen glowed brighter than the marble floor, numbers lining up neatly, impossibly. The billionaire's eyes narrowed, not in disbelief at first, but curiosity, then shock, then something like awe. The balance displayed was not modest, not accidental. It was staggering, a number that belonged in boardrooms and headlines, not in the hands of a man who scrubbed floors for a living. The truth behind that balance was not luck or crime or inheritance. It was patience. Years earlier, after his wife's death, Daniel had made a choice that felt insignificant at the time. He had taken a small insurance payout and invested it quietly, conservatively, refusing risky advice, adding tiny amounts whenever he could. He learned late at night, reading articles on a cracked phone while his daughter slept. He failed, adjusted, and kept going. He never touched the account, not when the car broke down, not when the roof leaked, not when loneliness pressed so hard it felt physical. That money was not for comfort, it was for freedom, and for his daughter's future. The billionaire stared because he saw something that challenged his understanding of success. He had believed wealth was visible, that it announced itself through suits and confidence and power lunches. What he saw instead was discipline hidden under humility, strength wrapped in silence. The lobby seemed to shrink around them, the executives suddenly unsure where to look, their laughter long gone. Daniel felt exposed, not proud. He locked the phone and returned it to his pocket, his face burning. He did not want recognition. He wanted pancakes and a normal morning and the dignity of being unseen. But something had shifted. The billionaire's expression softened, not with pity, but respect, the kind that comes when assumptions collapse. In the days that followed, Daniel noticed small changes. Supervisors greeted him by name. His schedule adjusted to give him mornings with his daughter. An envelope appeared in his locker, not with money, but with a handwritten note thanking him for reminding someone powerful of what quiet strength looked like. The billionaire did not offer him a job or ask for his story. He did something rarer. He listened once, learned once, and stepped back. Daniel's challenges did not vanish. His daughter still struggled with grief, sometimes waking at night crying for a mother who would never return. Daniel still fought exhaustion, still cleaned floors until his back ached. But inside him, something eased. He no longer felt invisible in the same painful way. He felt chosen by his own integrity. Months later, Daniel used that account not to escape work, but to build stability. He moved to a safer neighborhood, enrolled his daughter in a school with a garden, and set aside time to volunteer, helping other veterans learn what he had learned too late. He kept his job longer than he needed to, because humility had become part of him, and because he wanted his daughter to see that work, any honest work, mattered. The billionaire never laughed like that again. He funded programs quietly, mentored differently, and when asked in interviews about success, he spoke less about vision and more about patience, about the janitor who taught him that wealth is not always loud, and power is not always obvious. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that strength often lives in silence and kindness grows in unexpected places, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to channel name, because stories like this deserve to travel far and wide. Before we end, leave a comment below telling us what this story made you feel, or share a moment when someone surprised you by being more than they appeared. Daniel still checks his balance sometimes, not because he doubts it, but because it reminds him how far he has come, and how the greatest riches he holds are not numbers on a screen, but a little girl's laughter over pancakes, a quiet morning, and the knowledge that even in a world obsessed with appearances, truth has a way of shining through.